Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. So I'm trying to finish the installation of the Zeta armor handguards on my 2019 Honda CRF450L, and I'm running into another issue, and that is I think they've got the wrong hardware supplied. And I want to point out first, so the CRF-L is not specifically listed on here, but the CRF-R and X is, and it actually fits a pretty wide variety of bikes. You see the DRZ is listed on here. As well as the YZ, YZF, the WR, as well as the WR250 are the bike I used to own. And in fact, I've put these same exact parts on my WR250R a couple years ago. But Zeta made a design change, and I don't think they accounted for that in the supplied hardware. And it's a pretty big safety issue, and I'm not going to install it the way that it's supplied. And I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, as well as I'm going to shoot this off to Zeta as well and see what their response is. The design change that they made is this piece here. When I purchased this prior, this piece was milled out about halfway down, rather than this being just a solid face on both sides. Meaning that when you placed the bolt in, it actually sat down, recessed about halfway into this piece. Okay, so not only did that, you couldn't see the bolt heads, which was kind of nice. And they were, instead of being a hex head, they were a like the recessed kind that you'd use an Allen key on socket head. And it looks like they made that change and didn't change the bolts, because if I take a look at the bolt that was supplied by Honda here, and actually let me just walk you over and show you where I'm talking about so we're on the same page. So these are the bolts that go into the upper fork clamps, okay, and you can see how much of that is protruding. I measured this and it's about 16 millimeters, which is about what is spec'd on an M8 1.25 bolt going into cast aluminum, which is what this is. Now, granted, we're not torquing these all the way up to the maximum this grade bolt will handle, but still, it should be around 16 millimeters, and that's what I measure here. And I measured that with the plate on here that normally holds the blinker. Going back to the workbench, this is the bolt that Zeta supplies, and I should mention, so this is 50 millimeters. It's a bit tough to measure with one hand here, but this is an M8 by 1.25 by 50 millimeter bolt. The one supplied by Zeta is a 60, so 10 millimeters longer, which I think would be the right size for this piece in the old design. The problem is the bolt no longer recesses in there, and the amount of material here is roughly 20 millimeters. So yeah, I mean you're gonna have 10 millimeters less of thread engagement after installing this, which leaves hardly anything. Let's say between 5 and 6 millimeters. Now, these only torque up to, these bolts, the torque spec on these, I believe, is 17 foot-pounds. That's not a tremendous amount, but I'm still concerned about putting 17 foot-pounds, not so much on the bolt itself. I don't think there's an issue with the bolt. However, what essentially is acting as the nut is that cast aluminum, and 17 foot-pounds is a fair amount for, I mean, let's see if we can figure out how many threads that is. So let's go down to, I think on the safe side we could say 5 millimeters. It might be more like 5.5 or 6, but let's say 5. Of course, it's going to roll around on me here. So that's engaging somewhere between 3 and 4 threads in the cast aluminum. I mean, that's crazy. Someone's going to get hurt. I'm going to send this to Zeta as well and see what their response is. But there should be a lot more bite on that aluminum part that this is threading into with this kit installed.